Hi, this is Dr. Justin Agnieszka Chevalier. It's kind of noisy, but I hope that it records. I wanted to add to the esoteric aspect of desire a video. Before I do that, adding to it, I want to make an introduction. You can obtain that knowledge without verbalization in experience, especially with celibate monks and nuns and senior disciples. It cannot be usually easily experienced with persons who lack such vows or persons who have conditional vows, and that means it is possible but not plausible that you will obtain point of reference, and lacking point of reference you will merge expressions of desire in reciprocity or initiation as such, that are expressions of presence of your current experienced in the past in some exchange of desire partner versus not. And there is often intentional forcing and testing and trying to figure that out. So I honestly do recommend that you do so. I will describe what it is like and how to differentiate the two. Most persons will ignore that video and will push still harming others, speculations, insinuations, and pursuit of persons who I for sure know actually are in a relationship, and that desire is in appearance from the get-go split. What is a splitted desire manifestation? We can derive such from, for example, a pupil. Persons often that are experienced can perceive pupil dilation. I'm not talking about protrusion of eyes or redness. Pupil dilation that is accompanied by certain warmth and that is unmistakable of desire, and it is present in adults and in children, and we can derive from that pupil dilation if that person it is in reciprocity to self or it is not. I once posed self a question: is it possible if one exchanged desire and reciprocity in presence of one another in visible signs and symptoms of such, as if it is a declaration pending confirmation in pursuit of a relationship or such verbalization, resulting in state of elation and being in love, if it is possible to experience such in no physical contact, no pursuit with someone else. And the answer to that is own mind. And so I will tell you then how to recognize it in another person in signs and symptoms. It is obviously always pending confirmation, but it is quite reliable in how self feels. So if a person such as you, if you as self raise a thought of a memory of another man, being a female, or for a female of another male, for a male of another female, of such person in reciprocity to you, desiring and loving you, to even for a flash instance, in order to feel self love or desire for a completely different person, and obtained from that memory dilation of pupils and desirous and loving response to a new person in non-pursuit, then that other person is unlikely to reciprocate in direct relation to you. And that is not always necessary to raise that thought. Sometimes it may occur to you as if the desire was happening or descending while you feel as if numb. Now in the other person, usually it will be for as long as one feels in love and has hopes, or the other person in seriousness of love, pursuit of love, serious love, and relationship that is in desire serious, so in hopes of having something more lasting, you see, then that person will respond and the desire will descend in splitting, and that splitting is visible in pupil, in as if a vision of that person's eye pupil being floating or influencing per eye with another person, as opposed to the tension of such, or a non-searching, which means a person will search for desire looking down, trying to remember, or search for desire looking on a side, and then look at you and have that desirous response, but that will not be in visible arousal and in corresponding to such in you a response, or in response to some bodily features as a trigger, and then in response versus aversion to it in self, that in the males but also sometimes in females occurs. And so remember, when you look at another person and you self feel that you raised a thought of someone else and then felt for that person desire and bodily responses, then that other person usually will either reject, or if desire occurs, will always also split, remembering someone else. And because we cannot really couple up based on fourth random persons, it will be then sometimes consisting in frenetic seeking to push as energy or in person the third and the fourth ones, or reject that person to pursue someone else, so rejection. In splitting, when self is in state of no arousal, that other person, not knowing about partners, will again seek in memory or seek in a state of similar to the described of being taken away by a ship, of an absent-minded like arousal that is manifested by warmth and other manifestations, but that person will not perceive pleasure of you being the source. And then that sex is limited to describe with an ugly word, fornication, so an intent to encarve and elaborate desire by work or by postures or by mimicking what that person considers in memory markers as attractive, which is very less in intensity of pleasure and dissatisfying. It is that craving based of the sexual satisfaction that leads to very shallow orgasm, and also lack of, and very quickly lack of emotional and physical satisfaction in seeking someone else, and aversion to tenderness or expressions of love, because the desire is forced, you see. And so again, looking at another person, if self is numb or self does not find that the other one in physical presence is source for self to desire, then that other person, and I'm talking about body as whole, meaning pleasure, whatever perception in any bodily parts you have, if it does not cause overwhelming pleasure that can expand, that is not desire, that is simply a remembering of desire or an imprint of desire, and some pursue it as obsessive manifestation of desire. If there is no pleasure that you perceive, that is not desire. It can be the same as touching a bush, that if I close my eyes and obsess, oh my gosh, am I perceiving, for instance, Mr. X caressing the arm of someone else while I am in love with him, and am I really being cheated on or used and this and that? That is not true. That is a bush. Now if I envision Mr. X touching me and that bush coincidentally touched me, well, that is me being in love, and that is true because there is pleasure. Absence of pleasure, that is not desire. Those are just manifestations of other phenomena, and it can be anything. So it is to be ignored, and we are trained in Zen meditation also, and in mindfulness, to ignore. Again, no pleasure in self, desirous one, recognizable past certain age, in presence of the person in front of us, same, opposite gender, or whatever. Then all of those bodily impressions are negligible and not related to that person, and not cause to worry, no matter what other persons observe, including blushing, pupil dilation, genital dilation, or feeling for females of wetness or stiffness of penises in males. All of that, in absence of pleasure for self, is not desire, and that is unquestionably so. When the other person, however, in desirous form or manifestation of such, causes to self such pleasure and such desire, well, that is desire. If that person also does not cause such, then that is not self, that is the source of it, because aversion of self or indifference impedes that arousal in that person, unless that person seeks memory references by seeking common characteristics in self or memories in self of or other persons that desire that person, which again creates a satisfaction of being basically touched instead of a person who is absent. It can be just a few meters or absent, but still absent, you see. And that is always, at some point, a realization, okay, this is not the right person, and I am not satisfied, like having the wrong food. And so, again, in absence of pleasure in self, or spot-like, weird, averted to impressions, vision of a person's changes that are even consistent in fully fledged arousal, a person can be naked and aroused, are not more than physiological response to someone else, or to, for example, called in that person's absence of pleasure. We cannot know. Now, splitting of desire is common, and being in love with someone else, it is only possible to evoke memory of being desired by that person, to manifest the desire for another individual. And in that individual, it will meet with response. Can it be overridden? Well, answer yourself that question. If you are in love with someone else, then based on reciprocity in exchange of confirmation of love for one another, desirous one, that other person will not be possible to pursue for as long as the other person is hoped for or lived as in no rejection. And so it will be observed as, again, person seeking for memories, or also phrasing sometimes, my wife is gorgeous, or you look the same as my ex-girlfriend. And then person seeking for the desire in eyes will have desire. Often the desire will be resentful or based on as if numb self-initiation, which takes time to learn that sex is suboptimal. because there is no love, it can be, of course, overridden information of bond and attachment, and information of desirous bond in reciprocity when physical attraction is overwhelming. Is this possible to override all memories and all past experiences in pursuit of one another in person? Sure, if both are more loving, adoring towards one another and pursue such relationship immediately, that excludes others if in intensity and love that exceeds the